Hello and welcome to this week's Worship at Home. My name is Samantha, and as you know, I am one of the ministers here in the Northampton Methodist Circuit. In my experience, cooking is more than following a recipe. It's an art that develops over time and with experience and nurturing. I was recently taught how to prepare and cook a biryani, the Mauritian way. Now, over the week, I went to so many different places here in Northampton to find the different spices that I needed and to learn the recipe. When I was making the dish, I did, however, come to appreciate that the important key ingredients was love. Now, you may say, what has love got to do with cooking a biryani? For me, it was taking time to understand how each of the spices work together, how too much of one can affect the whole dish, and therefore the ultimate enjoyment of this ancient dish. Eating, as we know, is such a social activity through which we can communicate hospitality and welcome. However, welcome is dependent not only on the food we eat, but the words we use to communicate with each other. How we communicate with each other is at the heart of our reading today in James chapter 3 verses 1 to 12. As we know, words can either build people up or can tear people down. When I was growing up, I was told sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never hurt you. However, I think we would all agree that this statement is not true. That in fact the opposite is true. Words have power and can't be taken back and can affect us deeply. I suspect it will come as no surprise to us all then that James uses very vivid language and direct language to encourage us to tame our tongues as Christians. In verse 4, he starts to talk about ships and their rudders. Although the ships are so large and driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder, wherever the pilot wants them to go. A rudder is only a fraction of the size of the ship, like our tongues is only small in relation to our bodies. However, the size is not the important issue. It's how we use our tongue and how we control our tongue. That is the key issue. Take a moment now to reflect on the time when the impact of a conversation you have experienced has been like a spark that has ignited a fire that continues to burn for such a long time. Could, in that situation, creating space have made a difference? Space where we could think about how to respond so that fire is not ignited. Taking time for me to understand how the spices work together enabled me to create the biryani. Making space to reflect on how to respond is often difficult for us because our emotions are triggered through conversations. However, words said in haste are so often regretted. Now, I suspect that I'm saying nothing new to you in relation to the power of words and the lasting impact of them. Reflecting on James's advice, though, to tame our tongues and Jesus' teaching about love in Matthew chapter 22. Jesus says to love the Lord your God with all your heart and to love our neighbour as ourselves. We live in a world where pressure is on us to respond quickly. But maybe taming our tongues and to reflect God's love to those around us starts by creating space before we respond. Space that is filled with prayer, rooted in God's love, so that taming our tongue is less about the words and more about our relationship with God. Your prayer today could be to spend some time with God. Ask God to refresh you through His Spirit. And then speak to God about the coming week. Think about the opportunities that you may have to speak life-giving words to somebody, or to show love, to show God's love with someone that you are struggling to communicate with. But maybe try and find a different way how to communicate with them, to reflect God's love. Amen.